Welcome to the Nativity Podcast, where we give listeners a behind-the-scenes look into the life of our active Catholic parish here in Burke, Virginia. How can we help you grow in your own faith? Listen to find out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Episode 2 of a 4-part mini-series on Advent. And we are here again. I've got Mary Castellano.
Hello.
And I've got Alison Fram.
Hello.
And they are, along with me, your favorite priest in the whole wide world for the next 20 minutes.
And our topic today is humility.
Exactly. I take great pride in my humility. So we are here. I am Father Ed Bresnahan, and we are from Nativity Parish here in Burke, Virginia. Wait, everybody knows that already, right?
It's okay to say it twice.
Yeah,
I like telling
Burke.
everybody where we're from, even if you already know that.
It helps, though, because there are other nativities in like the greater DMV, DC area. So it never hurts to remind people that we're the one in Burke.
Yeah,
We're
we're
not
the one
in
in
DC.
Burke.
We're not the one in Timonium.
Yes. All right. And we are so glad to have you with us today. We have made it through 1 week of Advent, and I hope that whatever you were doing for your sort of things to get ready for Christmas and kind of to begin the season of Advent, I hope that last week was very fruitful for you as we talked about waiting. What should we talk about this week, ladies?
This week, we're talking about preparing. So it's finally December. Thank God, because in my... I've been waiting for this, as we spoke about last week.
Yeah.
That is my rule. I don't put on Christmas music. Like, it has to be December. For me, that's my rule. I don't know about you, Father, but I'm thrilled that it's finally December. We're in the second week of Advent. But we did make a promise to our listeners last week that we would ask you a question, Father. Allison, do you want to ask him this question?
Yes, we're curious how you feel about listening to Christmas music before the day of Christmas. Are you one that says Advent?
I'm going to be honest. I think I'm probably more of a purist. And when I say that I'm more of a purist, in my mind, here there's two sort of little things that kind of go on. The first is that Christmas is the only birthday where we basically celebrate the birthday before the birthday. And then basically the day of the birthday, we pack everything up. And it's like it never happened. Mm-hmm. So it always makes me feel bad that we gear up for everybody else's birthday until the big day. And then it's boom, we celebrate that person's birthday. Right. But we don't like celebrate their birthday before their birthday. It's like you don't surprise them before they come home for the surprise party. Right. And so I always feel like we do that with Christmas because we are, full blown with parties and decorations, and Thanksgiving hasn't even happened yet. And, like basically it's like the kids get their Halloween candy and their stockings in the same day. Right.
Some people do.
Some people do. Yeah. And so we are so like geared up that when the day happens, we're almost emotionally exhausted. And that just feels like that would be like the worst birthday. I feel like if everybody put all this effort into thinking about my birthday and then on the day of my birthday, they were just too exhausted to celebrate, I would feel like a pretty bad birthday. And I never want to do that to Jesus. But then I have a silly little, and this is a totally, probably just very petty thing, but my family was always very kind to me growing up. And they never put up Christmas decorations until after my birthday.
Yeah, you have a December birthday.
I do. My birthday is December 13th.
That's right.
And so I share a birthday with Taylor Swift.
Wow.
But it was just a thing that that they never wanted to sort of combine the presents, and they never wanted to, make me feel like my birthday wasn't special. And so they would always have my birthday, and then December 14th, we'd always go looking for, or whatever that weekend was, we'd always go looking for Christmas trees. So
interesting.
That's really nice, though. That's really, like you're saying, that's a very nice thing that your family did for you to make you feel special.
But then I always think to myself, I'm like, well, but as a church, we celebrate Jesus's birthday for a month afterwards. But do we really? Right? Because typically with Christmas, it's like once Christmas Day happens, nobody plays Christmas music anymore. Nobody, like, the decorations all come down and New Year's stuff comes in. Valentine's stuff comes on the St. Patty's Day stuff comes out in like last November.
Right. I think that's the difference between the stores and what the world, other people are doing versus what you and your people around you, can you continue to celebrate after? That's our challenge.
Because in theory, and to be fair, the church should be a little clearer about this, because we celebrate Christmas And we celebrate the octave of Christmas. Mm-hmm. And then when does the Christmas season officially end is traditionally the feast of the baptism of the Lord. But in some places, the actual end of the Christmas season is the feast of the presentation, which is February 2nd.
And wait, so the other feast is, what day is the other feast that you mentioned?
The Epiphany?
So day one is Christmas, so the 25th.
Yeah.
The end of the octave is usually the Feast of the Holy Family.
Right.
Or something around that time. So that's kind of what it is. But nowadays, the octave, it's usually the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God. So January 1st is usually where the octave happens, right? Where the 8th day, but the 12th day of Christmas would be January 6th, which is always traditionally Epiphany, but that gets moved around sometimes.
I think it's 8th this year. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the week after Epiphany is always the feast of the baptism of the Lord. So traditionally we kind of go real fast kind of through all that, where it's like, Christmas, Mary Mother of God, Epiphany, baptism of the Lord, and then Christmas is done. And each of those feels a little different. So it doesn't always feel like we're still celebrating Christmas. I mean, Jesus grows up pretty quick, right? Between Christmas and baptism of the Lord, right? It's like 30 years. It's like 30 years and it's about 2 weeks. So it's a little hard, I think, sometimes to kind of get a grasp on that. But I think if we were a little clearer and saying, no, still Christmas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a lot to prepare for.
Exactly.
I think that's definitely true. And especially because, again, everyone has different philosophies or takes on it. And some people are doing the Christmas music and before Thanksgiving and everything.
Right.
But it's interesting because the readings for this Sunday of Advent were a lot about waiting and justice. Which for me, it makes me think about the journey of Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem and how they were preparing to welcome their son in a very challenging way. I mean, I don't think any of us living in this time can appreciate what it must have been like for them to travel. And for anyone who's been pregnant, imagine sitting on a donkey and being incredibly uncomfortable and everything. So that is something that I associate with preparing for Advent, just thinking about, okay, if that was that was the experience of the Holy Family, how am I being present to the needs of people around me? How am I trying to justly care for people who are suffering during this month and not just focus on, I get to go to all these Christmas parties or I'm lucky to have money to spend on Christmas gifts, but not everybody is so lucky. So just kind of being mindful of that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because one of the reasons why I love like the month of December and like the Christmas season, quote unquote, in the general culture, not the actual, like Father was saying, the octave of Christmas, is because everybody tends to be in a very festive mood. There is something magical about it. There's something really enjoyable about listening to Christmas music while you're putting up your tree. And my family, usually we do it like mid-December. So there's a lot of joy in that. And so taking the time to take a step back and remember the hardship of Mary and Joseph's journey. I mean, I just had a picture in my mind of she must have been like 8.5, 9 months pregnant, like basically riding a mini horse.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, if anyone out there has ridden a horse, you know how uncomfortable that can be if you have, as a normal person who's not pregnant for a long period of time. I can't even imagine how uncomfortable that would be. And
it's not a small distance.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a small distance from Galilee, right, from Nazareth to Bethlehem. That's not, I mean, we drove it in a couple of hours.
Did you really?
Yeah, you drive it in a couple of hours, but I mean, it was like, maybe about a 2 or 3 hour drive, but 2 or 3 hour drive is a couple hundred miles. You have to walk that. that's a journey. I also always think, like, when people are preparing to welcome a child, right, there's so much joy that goes along with that, because you're decorating a room, you're getting, things from people, maybe have a baby shower. I mean, you're celebrating and festively in your home as you get ready to welcome the child into the home. But Mary and Joseph didn't get to do that. They had to leave their home because of a census. So they had to leave and go. So all that place where they would normally be receiving and they would be able to stay put, none of that is true for them. They had to go, and so there was something I really like. kind of speaks to what Alison was saying about the idea of justice. There's something unjust about Mary and Joseph having to leave the comfort and confines and safety of where they are, where they're used to, in order to go somewhere. And part of what we do during the season while we're in that festive mood is we're often in the giving mood, and we think about people who have had to suffer and people who struggle, people who are sort of stuck. Right? They have to be somewhere that they're not expecting to be. I mean, I think of our soldiers who don't get to come home for Christmas because they have to be somewhere else. I think of immigrants and migrants and refugees, people who aren't able to be in their homes because of a war in Ukraine or a war, or civil unrest somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
I was actually just going to say, as you're both speaking, for some reason there's this one scene from the movie Encanto that kind of came to my mind.
Great movie.
Yeah, I know at this point it's probably a couple years old now, but the heartbreaking like flashbacks of was it Abuela? I can't remember Abuela's first name, but her and her husband having to flee their home. At that point, she wasn't pregnant; she had already had the triplets, but she's literally carrying them, and they have no idea where they're going. Yeah. So, but like that's actually it's extremely humbling to like look at that kind of mental picture from this really popular movie and think of the Holy Family.
Yeah. And
because like you were saying, it's so hard for us to imagine what they actually went through all of our modern festivities and modern everything. But I can picture Encanto pretty clearly.
Yeah.
And I think just the truth of our parishes in Burke, we're very blessed to be living in Fairfax County. For sure, not everyone in our community experiences the ease with which my life, I've grown up here in Burke and I've been pretty blessed and everything. But I think the concept too of justice, that as we are preparing our hearts for Christmas, how might God be challenging us to speak up for the people that are suffering? And I just had, probably sounds like a super silly example of this, but I'm a big dog person. I have a dog. And I was recently in a situation where my breed of dog, someone was talking to me and making assumptions about the type of dog that I have because, those dogs are dangerous. They bite, they attack people. And the amount of anger that I had in this scenario and saying, how dare you? You've never met my dog. You don't know what my dog does. And I really started thinking after, do I do that with people?
Yeah.
But I get so frustrated when someone treats somebody differently, whether it's racism or, because of the country that they're from or because they're not able to communicate as well.
Their political opinions.
Yeah, just really challenging myself to think of, again, the Holy Family and their struggles, and would I speak up and call something out in the same way? And I wouldn't normally associate that with Advent. That doesn't feel like an Advent thing, like, I should probably be considering this topic during this time. But again, just looking at the readings, justice, welcoming, these are all topics that come up.
But I think it's so good because it doesn't necessarily feel like an exact word where the word prepare comes in. Because when we think of prepare, we think of like, we're decorating a home, but we're getting ready, like you said, listening to the Christmas music, maybe a few weeks too early.
We'll take that offline. I'll edit that out.
I couldn't resist. I had to throw that in there. But what I'm really getting at is the idea of part of what we do is we also prepare our hearts, right? And what does that mean? It's not just like, okay, my heart has a little baby Jesus shaped hole in it now, ready for when the Lord comes. It's, cultivating our intentions and cultivating our attachments and cultivating our vices and being able to, I don't want to say cultivating our vices, but like pruning our vices. There we go. Cultivating our virtues. There we go. But the idea of kind of like looking at and taking stock of where we are, right? So it's one of those things where you don't have to sit there and like, it's not just a matter of, okay, well, you're clearly not thinking about those who are less fortunate than you enough. Well, the real question is, let me look back in my life and say, well, have I been focused on myself or have I been focused on others? And as I cultivate and prepare for the coming of Christ, am I also preparing my heart to receive and welcome those people, right? If that makes, I say those people because we're also those people, right? Sometimes I think to myself also that there's sort of an underlying group that struggles with Christmas, and those are people who may have lost somebody over the course of the year. And so I think one of the beautiful ways that the church prepares for it's almost like like Advent prepares for Christmas, and then the month of November prepares for Advent, right? Because the month of November is all about All Souls Day, and it's all about.
True. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful way for us as we're like preparing is also to remember that like, okay, well, for those people for whom Christmas can be hard because Christmas was always at grandma's house, and maybe this year we don't get to celebrate it at grandma's house. Or going back to the Encanto image, right? Like they have to live every year knowing that they lost their father, right? And so for a lot of people, yeah, we might be joyful that we have a house and a new life together, but look at what cost, right? And so remembering that cost, it's helpful not to use that to darken the holiday, but to be able to prepare our hearts and still be able to celebrate, right? To find the joy in Jesus Christ, even in those moments where we miss or are struggling or something like that.
Yeah, I think just the general idea of preparing our homes, like you said too, but also who can we welcome into our homes during this period of time. I think it's pretty typical for people, you have a Christmas party, you invite the same people you always invite, that kind of thing. But maybe you've encountered someone, or like for me, maybe I've encountered someone that has lost somebody or is feeling lonely or lives here, but they don't have family around. They're not getting a lot of invites. Could I try to include them in something that I'm doing in my home? I think that's something for me that could be easy to do. It would just take a little bit of thinking about.
And you are like the queen of Friendsgiving.
Oh, well, that's so kind, Father.
No, just because like, to be fair, in our parish, I think we might have like 4 or 5 different Friendsgivings over the course from the different groups and ministries. But I think 3 of those 5 are orchestrated by you.
Wow. We need to extend this Friends Advent.
Friends Advent.
I think we need to add that to your title.
Yeah, Director of Friendsgiving.
That's
I like
Director
that.
Director of Friendsmas.
Order new business cards.
I love it.
So, but in terms of being able to kind of, like, again, what a great way to prepare, right? We prepare our hearts by considering who needs to be invited, right? Who's missing, and who's missing from the gathering, and who would Jesus reach out to?
Yeah,
so.
I think that's definitely huge.
There's also another way. I love what you're saying. I love that, Alison. Invite someone into your home. But I think maybe, I don't know, for any sort of introverts out there, or anyone's like, no, I don't like strangers. I don't like new people. Okay, like a good
I've been there too.
I think a good first step is also just like intentionally inviting the Lord into our day. That's something, I think I shared this on the last week's episode, where I have, I'm obsessed with journals. And so I keep a journal in my office, and one of my favorite kind of morning offering prayers is just putting it down on paper, saying like, Jesus, I invite you into my day, my thoughts, my work, my actions, and just making that very intentional invitation, openness. And then he just kind of takes it from there. But if journaling, maybe, to you listeners, is not like, that's not your thing. Another way that you can kind of spiritually prepare yourself, maybe to have that kind of openness, or even just entering further into this season of Advent. For anybody who doesn't know, every Tuesday we offer adoration from 5 to about 8 p.m. here at the church. So that's Eucharistic adoration. That's our Lord Jesus present in what we call a monstrance, which is this beautiful kind of, I don't know what you call it. It's like structure, object, gold thing holding Jesus. Display.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an ornate display made of usually gold and silver. It befits the goodness of God, right? We believe that Jesus is truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. And so, it's kind of worthy to make sure that you have something suitable, that if you're going to put him on display for folks to be able to come and visit, to see and adore, that it would be sort of a worthy vessel.
Yeah.
Right? For
and coming and like making, like we're saying, like making that intentional effort, that intentional invitation to come and just kind of be with the Lord. That's a really, really great way, at least that I have found in my own life. That's like a really beautiful way of getting to know the Lord better, just like putting myself literally in his presence, whether that's sitting, kneeling, whether that's bringing the Bible and choosing a passage, or if I don't feel like reading a whole chapter, just meditating on one paragraph from the scriptures, bringing my journal, or even just sitting in silence. Because I know that's a question when people often talk about adoration. They're like, I don't know what to do. They're like, okay, like I'm on board. I understand that that's Jesus, but like, what do I do? And it's like, sometimes you don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is a beauty in kind of that, like waiting, like we were talking about last time. There's a beauty in that. Alison, you gave a beautiful analogy last week of just like sitting, like a parent, or just sitting with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can kind of do that in a way, like spiritually at adoration, right. Just sitting with the Lord and kind of just letting him take over, just letting
him
kind
be
of,
with you.
Yeah.
There's a great story. I don't have a lot of art in my office where we record these podcasts, but I do have one picture. And on the picture is a picture of St. John Vianney. It's right behind you.
Oh, I was like,
sorry,
where is it?
Where is it? It's a picture of St. John Vianney, and he's praying before a monstrance. And there's a great story that goes along with it where he used to see this old man who was... would always come in to make a visit to spend some time with Jesus. And he would see him. He'd be locked intensely into prayer. And one day he asked him, he says, well, what do you do? What do you do when you're here before the Blessed Sacrament? And he just says this beautiful thing. He says, well, I look at Jesus and I let him look at me. And I love that image, right? I love that image. So you don't have to do anything. You just look at Jesus and let Jesus look at you, right? And so I think one of the cool things about it is that you can always make a visit to the church, but it's nice when the church sort of creates a specific time and a specific place for you to be intentional about it. Say, hey, come visit me. Come and see.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking too, another way for me that I enjoy praying, and I think it is applicable to the time of preparing, is to focus on gratitude. And for a long time, I purposely didn't do that because I thought that meant ignoring all the problems or ignoring all the struggles. I don't want to be grateful for this when all this stuff is going on. But I have found it's been helpful for me to, again, for me, I like writing. So write down, I'm thankful for all of these things. And I find that my mindset shifts and I can be so much more grateful going into my day versus if you're kind of trying to prepare from a place of feeling everything is negative and, oh, look at all the stuff that's going wrong. That has just been really helpful for me to actually say to God, thank you for all of these incredible things. I'm not pretending everything's perfect, but it just has been a big mindset shift and a good way to pray.
Isn't that amazing? Because there's so many struggles in the world, and there's so much imperfection in the world, and there's so many things that are imperfect in our own lives. And yet God is not sort of abandoned. Like God hasn't abandoned us. He's still working. So there really is kind of a sense of how do I work through the idea that God has given me exactly what I need in order to love him as best as he wants me to.
Wow.
And so being able to, how to give that back to him.
Yeah.
Shoot, man, I need to meditate on that. That's beautiful. That is great. God has given me everything I need. Wow.
I think this is the powerful and dangerous part of praying the Our Father, right? Because the dangerous part of the Our Father is, well, first off, is recognizing how you start by calling him Father, right? That's a powerful moment to say, okay, here we go. This is a conversation with my Father, right? And then the part where we say, give us this day our daily bread. Like, what does it mean to have our daily bread? That there's only and exactly enough of what you need.
Yeah.
Just for today. No
and
more
we want
and
to
no
have,
less.
We want to know the plan for way in advance.
We want to know the plan. We want to have all these graces. Lord, do all this stuff in my life. And the Lord says, okay, I will do enough in your life. And we're like, what doesn't feel like enough? How do I know? But it is enough because we prayed for our daily bread. And can I be grateful, not for what I wish I had, but can I be grateful for what I just do have?
Yeah. And I think there's that mentality too of, at least for me, I have struggled when I see people receiving lots of good things because I'm like, well, there's not gonna be enough. There's not gonna be enough for me. Does God get to give me the leftovers? But to really just sit with, no, God has so much more. He's overflowing with the amount that he can give to us.
Yeah.
There's so many images of scripture of the cup overflowing. And even just sitting with that, like he's not going to be stingy.
No, he's never stingy. But also, if he chose to, I'd be okay with him giving me the leftovers. Just because I know it was him. He's like, I need you to have these. You get the leftovers. Okay, that's exactly what I need today, I guess.
Wow, yeah. All really, really good things. Do we have any kind of concluding thoughts for today's discussion? Anything?
I got one.
You got one? Oh, I'm excited.
So I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and there was a reflection on the first couple of chapters of Luke, and it really gave me an insight into something that I think fits perfectly into this idea of prepare, because when we think about preparing, we are preparing a place for Christ so that Christ can be welcomed into our hearts at the beginning of Christmas, I should say. And it's a striking contrast, because what do we actually read about? Like, how was Jesus welcomed when he first came into the world, right? And there's this not so beautiful, this kind of difficult moment where there wasn't any room for him at the inn. Mm-hmm. And the conference, the guy at the conference mentioned, he said, one thing that's super important is that inns don't work the way that they work today, right? When we say there's room at the inn, or there's no room at the inn, it's because, college is having a graduation and all the Holiday Inns are booked, mm-hmm. right? There's no room in the hotel. Mm-hmm. But when you go to visit a town in the ancient world, that's your family. Mm. Right? You're going to visit your kinsmen and your kinswomen, and you're visiting your relatives. So what it is it's not so much that the local hotel was all filled up. It was that the local family of Joseph and Mary chose not to prepare a place for Jesus, which is fascinating, because the only other time that word is used in Scripture about the inn and a prepared room is the Last Supper. Mm-hmm. So the moment when Jesus then says, go into the city and find this room, you will find it already furnished. And so for the Last Supper, that person had prepared for Jesus to celebrate the Last Supper. But when he was born, the family did not prepare a place for Jesus. They actually, you have to be intentional and reject the person coming in to be in that spot. It was a fascinating thing. And I think to myself, what am I doing? Am I preparing a place like Jesus asked at the Last Supper? Or am I not preparing a place the way that his family rejects him in the inn and the tavern?
Those are great questions.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a lot of really, really great stuff to meditate on. Wow. I hope you listeners feel the same, because I'm like blown away. I'm like, I need to write all this stuff down. I need to journal now.
No, we prepare. Preparation is such a powerful thing. Mm-hmm. So we didn't prepare. We prepared our hearts during Advent, but we didn't celebrate yet. We weren't there yet. Mm-hmm. So I know that everybody does this a little different. Some people celebrate Christmas right from November 1st. And some people, I think, like you said, it was mid-December. When do you guys start preparing?
We usually would do the tree, I feel like early December.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
slowly building up, slowly building up to something, which is exactly what we're doing here, right? We're slowly building up to something. We hope that this has been a really powerful moment for you guys, a chance to enter into this beautiful gift of Advent. And next week, we'll be back with even more.
I can't remember the topic off the top of my head, but we will be back with even more.
It'll be exciting. So we've got preparation, we have waiting, and we've got preparation, and then who knows exactly what God has in store for you.
That's right. So tune in next week. I hope this was helpful for you to enter into this Advent season. Thank you all so much for listening, and God bless you.